Warm greetings, everyone. It's Dr. Laura Penn here on the microphone. Looking forward to sharing this very special edition podcast episode with you. This is an interview that I had with my teacher and mentor, Maria Franzoni, back in October 2025. Maria Franzoni is the host of the Speaking Business podcast. And in her words, this podcast is a practical, no waffle, no nonsense podcast packed with actionable advice for speakers wanting to be more bookable and make more money. And those words really summarize Maria Franzoni to a T. She is a former Speaker Bureau owner and now supports professional speakers to be more bookable and make more money. And that's what I've been working with her on for the past year and making great progress with. What an extraordinary journey it's been to work with Maria. And as a kind of closing off of my chapter with her, Maria was kind enough to invite me to speak on her podcast, which was such an honor and a treat. And this podcast episode really comes from the heart. It's all about how speaking is an art form, a craft, and what it means to be a speaking artist, and how speaking is a performance art, like theater and dance and music. So sit back, relax, enjoy. This podcast has lots of twists and turns. And I tell you what, I hope that you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed being interviewed for it. And by the way, big shout out to Maria Franzoni for allowing me to publish this podcast episode on Leadership Speaking Radio. Here we go.
Hello and welcome back to Speaking Business Podcast with me, your host, Maria Franzoni. My guest today is an expert in leadership communication and the speaking arts, international keynote speaker, podcast host, author of 4 books, a four-time TEDx speaker, and founder of the Leadership Speaking School. Based in Switzerland, she transforms leaders, teams, and change makers into authentic communicators of the digital age. Please welcome my good friend, Dr. Laura Penn. How are you, Laura?
I'm smashing. I'm so happy to be here with you today, Maria.
It's lovely to have you, and you have a beautiful voice. I love it when I interview people who have beautiful voices.
Well, yours is very melodic as well.
Thank you. I do my best. So in the intro, we talk about speaking arts and that you're an expert in speaking arts. What's a speaker artist? What is speaking arts?
A speaker artist is a person who believes that speaking is a performing art. A performing art like theater, dance, music. These arts, these performance arts, have 2 things in common. 1, they take place in front of audiences. And 2, they use craft. That these artists have to have a background of artful skills that they use in order to do those crafts well. So a dancer obviously has years of craft. Performing musicians, years of craft. Same with speakers, years of craft. And if you're wondering what that looks like, maybe that's the next question. The craft itself for a speaker artist is 2 things. 1, content and how that's created is done with artful skill. And 2, the delivery of that content is done with artful skill, with craft. So that's kind of how the whole ecosystem moves and weaves together.
That's really fascinating. So if you don't have that craft, if you're not a speaker artist, what's the disadvantage?
It's a good question. The disadvantage is that you're using habits to write your content. You're using habits to perform them. Habits are useful. They help us to survive and to thrive. And it's sort of a collection of things that have worked in the past that you do again and again and again. But there's really not that choice that you have when you do something with craft or when you're an artist about it. That's the difference. You have a choice like, what form do I want to use for my content? How do I want to use poetic devices? How do I want to use metaphor, alliteration? These are actually part of the craft of the creation of the content. And if you don't have that, maybe you're just downloading whatever you usually do. Maybe that looks like your textbook knowledge of your topic and it's just, gushing that. but it's not designed necessarily with that intention or knowledge or choice of what you could be doing with it. Same for delivery.
You've got me worried now. I think I might have got into habits here, and you're making me think widely now. So how does using craft then change your performance as a speaker?
It helps you in three different ways. On the one hand, you prepare differently. So literally the preparation of how you create it, that's a process and what I like to call a ritual. And every speaker artist that I know has a ritual. So you're using ritual to create this piece of art. You're also identifying it as a piece of art. So somehow the stakes get higher. There's somehow more soul or love or gift of yourself inside that process. And then another thing that happens when you have this craft and you're using it intentionally is you can lean into it, which means, we all have crazy moments when we're on stage. Things go wrong. Um, Things that you have no control over happen. But the only thing you have control over, and this is how I like to think, is how well prepared you are. And that preparation from the creating of the content to the rehearsing of the content to the warming up of the content to the delivery of that content, that process is craft.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So how do you learn this? Where do you start?
Yeah, it's a lifetime journey. I mean, let's bring it back to if you're a ballet dancer or if you play the violin. Where do you learn that? You start hopefully as early as you can, and you practice it often, and you make a lot of mistakes, and you get back up from those mistakes better from learning, what you failed. You turn your failures into wins. And it's that kind of, step ladder of I'm working here and I'm kind of at a plateau, and then I'm elevating and trying something new, going out of my comfort zone, increasing and heightening my knowledge, and going up and going up. That's what this looks like, this journey of learning a craft like leadership speaking or public speaking, the speaking arts, we call them here. So this is a journey, it's a process, and it doesn't have an ending. That's good and bad, but you never stop learning, and you're always improving it. That's kind of the mindset you have when you need to think about where to start and where to go.
Excuse me, I'm sneezing. I have hay fever at the
Oh,
moment.
yes, it's the
So
season.
anybody else who's listening in who has hay fever, I say that only the most intelligent people suffer from it. I don't know if you agree with that.
I do agree. I had it bad myself.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. So that just proves my theory. So
Yes.
take me behind the scenes, Laura. Take me behind the scenes of you preparing a presentation or a speech. What's your process for creating your art speech?
Yeah. So again, I bring it back to the word ritual. This concept that it has, I've built a way to do it that works for me, infusing the elements that we're talking about. So let's say that I get hired for a talk 3 months down the line. I love that time frame. First of all, 3 months is like my golden number. That gives me enough time to prepare the content and to rehearse it. So I get this gig, and the first thing that I do is in my ritual, I've got to open. So that means literally like it's like going into a musty house and opening the windows and airing it out, opening the door, letting all the air in. What I mean by opening is I need to kind of get into the spirit and the mode of what it is that I'm about to do. And once I open, man, my senses switch on. So I go to art museums, I cook delicious food. Everything that's kind of sensory is amplified. And I'm really listening to things differently. I have conversations with people. I seek out books to read. So I'm really trying to kind of make my inside world really colorful to get it ready. It's kind of fuel for the art, if you will. And then when there's this sort of perfect storm of all of these elements inside, I buy a very nice notebook. And I have a lot of notebooks because I've done a lot of talks. So every notebook is bespoke for me. It's one of those notebooks you go to a bookstore and you buy it and it smells good when you open it. And anyway, I get really nerdy about notebooks. So I have a notebook, and I have this notebook really close to me. So close to me, and this might sound a bit crazy, but I sleep with it next to my bed. Because we have those nights where we wake up, one eye opens, and you're like, wait, I have an idea. that notebook is now going to be that place where I start to put that information, those thoughts, those words, those sentences, those strings of concepts. They start to go in there. And eventually, with time, and this is why I like that 3-month window, because it takes about a month and a half for me to create a really good talk, then I start to write. It's like when the cup spilleth over, I find myself at my computer and it's just pouring out of me. And this is my process. And of course, many iterations. I do all of my reading of the content that I've created out loud. I really want to use my voice and my hearing to hear the words. And then eventually I start moving, so I'm moving in the space and reading it out loud because this is an embodied experience. The craft and the art of speaking is about how you're using your whole body to create something that has a heartbeat and that is art. That's my process, my ritual.
Do you know what? So much of what you're saying is resonating with me because I'm preparing a speech at the moment. And the idea of a notebook, I'm going to go and get myself a really nice notebook because it's absolutely true. What tends to happen is, first of all, you think, I have no idea how I'm going to approach this. And then you start getting these ideas and then it starts getting very exciting. But you do need to write it down. And I do think writing it down actually is much better than recording it or initially. And it's interesting that then you write the speech and read it out loud rather than speak it and record it. Talk me through the difference there. Or
the truth is I do both, but in the earlier process, the earlier part of the process, I'm writing it and saying it, like I'll print it. I'm very analog. I'll print it and read it. Eyes, page, ink, words. And then when it starts to get to the other phase of it, so let's say I've got through this month and a half of my sweet spot of 3 months, the talk is ready. I know it's ready, by the way, because, and here's another weird sleeping habit of mine with my ritual, because I want to sleep with the script under my pillow.
Okay, there's some weird stuff coming out.
I know there's some weird stuff, but it's about love. It's about, this is now created. So then in the rehearsal process, which is kind of the next bucket, that's when I engage my reading it and, putting a voice memo on and hearing it and, really taking that script with me everywhere I go. When I'm stirring the soup, I'm in the supermarket, I'm driving in my car, all of those windows to start to memorize it.
So to talk to me about the rehearsal, give us tips on rehearsing, because I think that's an area that I can be a bit weak on.
Yeah, rehearsal is so important. And all you have to do, again, is to remember the framing that the speaking art is a performance art. So just, think to yourself, okay, what dancer is not rehearsing? What actor, what musician? And then you ask yourself, what speaker is not rehearsing? And if they are rehearsing, how are they doing it? There is a very clear way to rehearse, which is craft-based. Here's that word again. And there are stages in an ideal situation, which is why you almost need that month and a half. The first stage is the read-through. This is, again, now I'm reading it out loud, but this is like, you might have seen, documentaries of how screenwriters talk with the actors and they're all sitting around a table and the actors are reading. It's called the read-through. You do that first. And this is where you're catching any tongue twisters or any kind of things that actually don't work in the mouth. That's actually the first stage of rehearsal. The second stage of rehearsal, after you made those tiny little polishes, is now you're going to do the vocal layer. How am I going to use my voice to bring these words to life? And that's craft-based. If you don't have those skills, you're going to be using habits. Well, I'm going to start like this. Welcome, hello. This is that habit. But when you're using craft, you're thinking, wait a minute, how do I let this word reveal itself? How do I say it was the happiest day of my life? It was that, and you try that out and you're literally playing with that for about 2 weeks. And you're rehearsing 3 times a day. I like to do mine after breakfast, after lunch, after dinner, because I got to eat. So I might as well rehearse. And there you are rehearsing just that layer of the vocal, just what you're doing with your voice. And of course, at the same time, now you're memorizing it at the same time. So then that's done and dusted. And once you're done with the vocal layer, okay, now it's time to figure out where you're going to be in space. Not, when you're going to point your index finger or, applaud real loud. No, it's not that kind of choreography. It's where in the space am I moving? How am I moving with purpose on this stage? And it can be any kind of stage. The stage that we all know as, keynote speakers, big, small, medium, boardrooms, whatever those are, how are you moving there? How are you making that content come alive in different parts of that space, that stage? Because the stage has different levels of power. Are you going to be in the power position when you start? Are you going to be center stage? When are you going to go over to stage left, talk to downstage left and talk to that part of the audience? So your audience, or your content rather, brings you to different places in space. You're rehearsing that for 2 weeks with the layer of vocal. So you got the read through, the vocal layer, the body layer, and now you're getting pretty darn good at this content. So this is how you do it. And the key, Maria, is to do it 3 times or more, depending on how tight that timing is, a day. It's
Wowzers.
yeah.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And people, this is where people always kind of either freak out or say, aha. The people who freak out are like, I don't have any time. This isn't going to work. I can't memorize things. And that's one story. But the people who say, aha, they're like, oh, that's how it's done. Okay. Because your body needs to develop literally new brain cells to hold this content. And when you have the content, when it is of you, I like to say, only then can you really be authentic. Only then can you switch off the, oh, I don't remember what I'm going to say next, that tense mode, which is disastrous for connection. Tension is the enemy of your voice as well. Only when you've got this content of you in your cells, literally, can you now go off and be a natural looking speaker. And the best compliment you can get, in my view, of speaking is somebody comes up to you and says, wow, that was a really good impromptu speech.
Fantastic. I love that. So I know we're going slightly on a tangent in terms of the questions you and I were going to talk about, but I know you're going to let me do this. What about sort of visuals and supporting? How does that come in? Do you use any kind of visuals in terms of PowerPoint or props? What do you use?
Yeah, I mean, before I was, like a purist. I was like, no, I will not use the PowerPoint. I'm an artiste. But of course, those spaces that we speak in are really made for visuals, aren't they? And, a little human on stage and then this big screen and a big stage, they don't go well together if there's nothing on that screen. So then I gave in and I started using more visuals, but just as supports. If I'm talking about numbers, there's maybe 3 numbers behind me on a high contrast screen, a black screen with white numbers, and that's it. So I'm going to go really minimalist, and I'm only going to do it when I need it because I want the eyes on my instrument, me performing it, my voice. And I do this one thing which people kind of like when I talk about because, I mean, it's a very obvious thing to do, but a lot of people don't think that they can do it. I put in quite a lot of blank slides where there's nothing. It's just sort of a, whatever background I've chosen, it's just the background. Because that's the moment where the eyes in the audience will be looking at that and they're like, oh, there's nothing there. So then the eyes will move to the figure on the stage and just look there. That's what I want. So you can design that moment and those moments through those slides. And I know like the AV and the tech people that always help at my keynotes, amazing humans that we couldn't do our work without, they're like, hey, is this a mistake? You've got 3 blanks in here. I'm like, no, it's not a mistake. Leave it. So this is a really important part of actually the craft, knowing that you can use that as a tool to make the eyes go to you.
I like that. I like the blank slides because I think sometimes a slide is up for a long time and you've already talked about it and it's a distraction. So actually, exactly. I really like that because it's all about helping that audience to stay with you. Yeah. How do you personally keep on top of your skills?
I am just a massive nerd, Maria. I'm a lifelong learner. I drink, eat, inhale this content. I live for it. I just have my antennae up for things that I'm really curious about and interested in, and then I go there and I seek more. And I also am very tuned in to what I need to do more of. If I'm, doing X and it's not working very well, I got to go back to the stables and like figure that out. I got to go back to the workshop and re-fiddle with that thing. So I learn it. So it's this, you know, unwavering curiosity that sometimes is almost manic, and this awareness of, oh, I got to work on this, so let me go over here and do that for a while. Those two things combined pretty much keep me on top of this craft. I also am very humble. You know, this, as I said earlier, is a lifelong thing. You're never going to know everything, and your mistakes will turn into wins. So trust the process. It's a journey.
I can attest to the fact that you are very humble indeed. You're very easy to work with and to be around as well. Talk to me about the Leadership Speaking School, what that's about, how it came about, who it's for, and what that term actually means.
Sure. So I've had two careers. My first one was conservation science, conservation biology. And when I relocated with my family to Switzerland back in 2009, I had taken a little hiatus to raise my two children. And I wanted to rejoin the workforce when we moved here, which is where I'm still living. And I couldn't come back. There was no way in. There was no on-ramp for somebody like me who had taken some time out. So I was sitting in with at a conference of my colleagues presenting, conservation biologists talking about things that are going on out there. And I noticed something really, really radical and dangerous. I noticed that they couldn't effectively communicate their conservation messages. And here we are. Already conservation is a crisis discipline, but here's a crisis within a crisis. If you can't talk about these issues, how are you going to save wildlife in wild places? So there and then was the aha moment where I was like, hey, let me roll up my shirt sleeves and fix this, because I come from a performing arts background of theater and dance, my whole life doing it. So I built a toolbox for my conservation peers to help them to promote conservation through effective public speaking. And that became the seed of the Leadership Speaking School, which is now where I work and train leaders, teams, and change makers how to communicate with what I call impact, authenticity, and human connection. And leadership speaking is the method I've developed of this craft.
Fantastic. And who are your best clients then? Who are the clients that benefit the most?
Yeah, well, the word leadership is intentional. So I really want to serve those people who are in charge and responsible of big teams and big ideas. So my clientele are leaders. We're talking about C-suite leaders. We're talking about also middle managers who are on their way up that leadership journey. I do also love to work with young leaders, so these change makers who are innovating and helping to make the world a better place through their sustainability solutions. And by the way, this now goes way beyond the conservation and sustainability community, where I'm working with leaders from corporations and business schools, really people who are hungry, Maria, for the tools that they need in order to heighten themselves as leaders through effective communication.
And we see many of them on television who definitely need you and need your help because their communication is quite poor. Let's not name names.
Let's not.
We're probably thinking of the same people.
I think so.
Okay, so coming back to the speaking and speaker, what advice would you have for others who want to speak in this way?
Part of the ritual that I described, that opening phase, open, which is like, you know, basically waking up. Like, oh, look around. What's here? Do that first. You've got to be awake. None of this happens without that first step. And then start getting really curious. Get drawn, allow yourself to get drawn to the people who are doing this really well. Find out who they are. Study them a little bit. That's so easy to do these days. And in the best case scenario, some of those people are actually teaching their methods. Look for those people. They leave breadcrumbs. My teacher and mentor, for example, is Patsy Rodenberg, who's known as kind of the world's best voice teacher. There was a big time in my life a couple of years ago where I was like, oh man, this is a skill I need to get much better at using my voice. Who's doing this well? I found Patsy Rodenberg. So she became my teacher for 2 years. You can't do this alone, FYI. A lot of people will DIY this kind of training. And there are resources out there. And, you know, you and I know we're both contributors to our in our own way to these fields.
That's just a small part of it. What you need is the teaching. You need the teacher. You need that guide. And when you find that person and invest in that person will turbocharge you and be really specific, heightening your learning, making what would probably take you 5 years to do on your own take 1 year, because everything is so synthesized. So find your teacher and learn from that person. And one last thing to answer the question is, see this art as a buffet table, where it's not just one thing on that table. It's many different pieces that create the meal. And there are many different pieces that create the meal, using the metaphor, of the craft of the speaking arts. You need to be good at all the things I've talked about, and movement, impromptu speaking, humor is in there. What's on that buffet table? Go and get it and eat it until you've had your fill and you feel ready to use that and apply it with joy.
Now you're making me hungry.
It is lunchtime over here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe this is why we're talking about food. It's been mentioned.
I think
times.
so.
Yeah. So what skills do you wish you had had when you started as a speaker?
I wish I had the skill of asking for help. Growing up when I did and how I did, it was a one kid show. I had to take care of everything myself. I was very independent, didn't ask for help, was too shy, didn't want to bother anybody. And I brought that limited mindset into my journey and thought, oh, I'm going to do this all alone. It's going to be me. And that's why I was just talking about that example of get help, because it's going to accelerate your learning. Man, I would have been 5 years ahead if I'd asked for help in the beginning of this. So when that finally, switched on for me, everything changed, everything accelerated, and everything, got better. So that's skill number one. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's so many people there who are ready to roll up their shirt sleeves and help you out. They care. And then one last skill is, be so curious that it wakes you up in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? Like, boom, what do you want to know more of? Go get it. Go get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. You're so excited about it that you can't sleep sometimes. Yeah. That's really great. What have I not asked you that I should have asked you, Laura?
Ooh, I think you've done a really good job going through all of this. I think maybe it's not a question, but it's just kind of a little ending bit. A lot of people get quite intimidated when I talk about craft this way. They're like, oh, one more thing to learn. I don't have time. Usually that's the thing I hear the most. I don't have time. Make time. This is a skill that will serve you in your speaking career, period, but will also enhance and engage all of those people that you are touching with your words. So, I love to play with that word presentation, that the hidden word inside of it, of course, is present, as in being present, which is a big part of the craft, FYI, but also it's a gift. And you are, as that speaker, giving a gift, the gift of your time and preparation and craft and skillful building of this thing. And of course, the gift of the delivery of how you give it. You're giving a gift to those audiences. Be generous, be intentional, and do the work that you need to do so that it's the best gift you could ever give.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Make time and give them the best gift that you could ever give.
Yeah.
Laura, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
The best way is on LinkedIn. You can find me at Laura Penn, PhD. And the other best way is to go visit me on my website, which is laurapenspeaker.com.